get into art in general?
Well, I've always drawn, but not consistently. I've been, pretty sporadic. And when my oldest son was born, I started doing a lot of drawings for him, cartoon type stuff. And then I did that for a while, about 3 years, and it started coming easy. And I started doing more finished drawings. And my father-in-law passed away. I did his portrait. And then somebody at a print shop saw it, and they really liked it. They said, you should do some neutral stuff. The cartoons gave me confidence to continue to draw, because I did that for 3 years straight. Like every morning before I went to work, I'd draw a cartoon. And my kids are like, they're almost a year apart, like all three of them, so they're very, it's like tic-tac-toe. And so what I did, I just kept drawing like that, and that gave me confidence, because I had a struggle with that, because even when I was younger, I went to SMU for art, and it was visual design, I believe, and I was petrified to take a studio art class, and I never did end up taking one, because I thought that, I'm like, these people are gonna, blow me away with their skills and stuff, and so I just basically, I laid back. I went to the Fall River Art Association one time, and the person that was teaching it said that, she thought I had talent. And I still, it didn't really fly to me. I still didn't have confidence, but then, after a while, I started to draw a little bit more. And again, it was like sporadic. I don't have the desire to do it all the time, but when I'm working on a piece, it's like this drive. And it's the biggest thing I can say about this type of art is it's a process like oil painting. Like one day you do one thing and you'll love it. The next day you hate it, and then you love it, you hate it, you love it, and you reach a peak, and then the peak starts to come down. Like it's hard to explain, but the process is the hardest part of the work. It's hanging in there until you finish the entire piece, but there's a lot of temptation in the middle there to say, this isn't going to succeed, it's not going to be any good, or, and I talk to people that say they'll start a drawing, tear it up. I'm like, you're probably just at the beginning phase of it. And if you continue to go with that, it's going to be good, but you gotta plug in the time. I mean, you gotta pay your dues, or it's not going to happen,
You were talking about the process. You want to kind of walk us through how you would go about doing one of these?
Yeah, it's like there's so many little things I do in between, and I actually, for this show, I tried to write some steps down, and then I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to confuse everybody, because a lot of it's intuitive. Like, I could be, if I was doing a drawing, I might have like 3 pencils in between these fingers and 2 paintbrushes in between these fingers and a kneaded gum eraser in I'm all packed up with everything, and I'm not even really thinking about what I'm doing. Like I just automatically, I say, okay, this needs a 4H pencil because I'm trying to match this chalk over that. But you see how I'm already getting confusing. I'll lose anybody on that. But the basic thing that I do is first of all, it's very important what kind of paper you use. Because if you like for this style of drawing, if I use a real toothy paper, it's hard for me to get the really smooth look. I think the smoother it looks, the more realistic, the more the textures look real. But I use a Bristol board 400 series, and it's very smooth. It's like a piece of cardboard almost. That's one thing I didn't bring today was a paper, but that's to me, that's the most important thing. If you start with the wrong type of paper, you'll get frustrated if you try this technique. But I use that. Then I do a line drawing that doesn't take long at all. Like all of these started out with just, a simple line drawing. It's an outline, but it's also, I map all the values It looks like kind of like a paint by number. When I finish the line drawing, it looks like a paint by number. It's got the, you can see what it is. If it's a dog, you can see it's a dog, but you'll see where the fur, where I'm going to plan to shade, and that's just called mapping it out. And it looks like a puzzle. It looks like a puzzle, and that's the way I draw too. I try to draw exactly what I see and not what I think I see, because if you do that, you run into all kinds of problems. So I do it like a puzzle. Once the line drawing's done, I take vine charcoal and I'll grind it into a piece of sandpaper. And then I'll take certain type of paint brushes, and whatever I have mapped out that I know is my darkest or lightest value, it depends. Sometimes I go with one, sometimes I go with another, but I'll start to put that in with the vine charcoal. And then I sort of calibrate everything to that value. So in other words, if I have a charcoal gray type of value, and that's my darkest in the drawing, I'll do that, and then I scale everything to that. So if it's a shade lighter than that, and it's near the nose or something on a dog, I'll use that, and I just keep building off of that and building my way around. The other thing is, I try not to do too much work where my arm is lying on the paper, because you'll smudge as you go along. If you did the bottom part first, and then you started, your elbow and your forearm are going to take it right off, because it's only powder. That's what I would consider myself a powder artist and not so much of a pencil artist. There's people that do beautiful work in pencil. Basically, what I'm using is the powder, and I'm applying it to the paper and I'm taking the tooth out of the paper by painting it on, and then that's what gives it its look. Now, obviously I use the pencils, but it's all to texture. Sometimes you can use a pencil, you can have it sideways and go very gently, and you'll end up with a certain look. Sometimes I can put I'll even take a razor blade and put a really sharp point on it after I sharpen it with an electric sharpener. And I'll just like fine little points like that. Sometimes I use pointillism with the tortillons, or like over there the stumps, the blending stumps. Sometimes I grind those down in the sandpaper until I get a dull point, and then I'll put it in the charcoal and I'll color it in with that. And the other thing is I also use an eraser just as much as I use the charcoal or the pencil, because you can take out the whites or any light portion. You can just dab the kneaded eraser. That's why I use a kneaded gum eraser. It's just, they come in a little block. And then I also use I forget what they call them, but it's like a pen, and I chop the edges off with a razor, and I get a sharp line, and you can draw a sharp, you can cut out sharp eraser marks with that. So there's tricks to everything, and
Where do you get your inspiration for these different pieces from?
The inspiration's funny, because sometimes even it might take me like 3 weeks or a month. Sometimes I feel like I'm slacking, but between drawings, I can't just do anything, because I have these, oh, I would like to do this. Like, my son wanted me to do a picture of a striper that he caught, and I was interested in doing that, but then I kept looking at my references, and I'm like, it's just something that moves you. I don't want to sound too, but there's something that draws you to make a certain creation of something. Like the last one that I did, he wanted me to do the striper, but I looked at it and I'm like, well, I'm not really sure. So I had some cedar wood at home, so I ended up, I said, you know what, I'll hang some lures off of this. So I slammed some bent nails into it and stuff like that, and I put some lures on there, and a little piece of paper on the bottom to do the gone fishing, and that moved me more than doing the fish itself, even though I think I could have did a good job on that. But it's still lifes I like anyhow, because it's life behind the picture, and you can use your own imagination. There's some people that might look at that love to fish, and it brings them back to when they were maybe a younger person or whatever, and used to fish with a dad or, you know, whatever. So, but it's not something that I just pick out and say I'm going to do a bird. Otherwise, I think I would be an artist. I've seen a lot of artists that do, they categorize things like they just do birds, or they do birds and portraits, or just portraits. Or I find that if something's really intriguing to me, then it starts to, the seeds going, and that's when it stimulates me to work on it.
Now, I understand these pieces take quite a while to complete. You want to talk about the time frame there?
They do take a while. It's not, this type of work is like this layer upon layer of graphite and charcoal, and that's something that, you know, I think if you don't do this type of work, you won't have really an appreciation for how much time goes in, because you have to, I'll put vine charcoal on it first, and then I'll color over it with a pencil, and then I'll look at it, and if it's not the right value, I'll take more vine charcoal and paint over it. But I can't even tell you some of the layers that go on. It could be like 20, 30 layers of different types of pencils that I'm putting on just to get one piece to work. These drawings go from anywhere. I believe I did a double portrait way back, and that took me about 50 hours, I believe. And I've had them go all the way up to 135. And I was like actually clocking it in all the time, just because I wanted to know, because, you know, if you go to a show, you don't want to underprice yourself either, because if it takes a long time and you're putting your effort into it, you know, you want to earn what you need. But it's, you know, it's more important to me anyhow that people just, if they look at it and they like it. I go to art shows sometimes, don't make that much money, but the people really love this stuff, and that's what really makes me happy when they see it. And, you know, so the time, you know, I've had other artists say, you know, well, how much you're not really making any money on it, but that's not, I don't think, what the most important thing for me is. I just like people to enjoy what I'm doing. I don't believe I'll get rich off of it or anything, and that's not my object. I start to love black and white, and every time I say I'm going to go into some other different medium, it just never happens, you know, at least yet.
Do you have a favorite piece in here, in this collection?
It's funny because, you know, when I look at them, for me as an artist, I'll look and I'll say, you know, this is nice, but I remember when I messed up on this, that, and the other thing, and look at that, I hope nobody notices that spot over there. Even my kids know that I'm fanatical about that, because I'm like, if I blow the powder off the paper and a little bit of spit, not a little tiny bit, it can make a stain on the paper. Then when you go over it with charcoal, it makes a blemish, and I'll tell them all the time, please don't get near this. And and I got to be careful too, because I won't want to sell it or even have people look at it if they look. Now I know that there's mistakes and all these things, but you know, it's one of the things that if I feel like, well, they're going to miss it, I'm fine with that. But you know,
I think with most of these, the realism of, you know, the drawing itself kind of takes people's eyes away from imperfections and draws it more to the perfection.
Yeah, one thing that I really would like to stress that to me is something that's major in this type of work is that you don't have to get the whole drawing to look good, but there's certain portions that have to be dead on. And I think your eye is drawn to that. And the rest of it, if you were to scrutinize my drawings, you'd say, oh yeah, that's kind of hacky for leaves or for grass. But if you get the main point of interest and you really nail that down, you'll come up with something good. But I went off on a tangent, but I don't have a favorite, although anything with my children, that's the big deal for me. Because I did one of my 2 boys, I got a couple of drawings of my daughter, and so that's more of a heirloom for me, you know.
Do you want to give some words of encouragement to young artists out there looking to get into this?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say, because I think about this all the time, my art started to bloom way late in life. I mean, in my 40s. And so for one group of people, I want to say it's never too late if you like doing art, whether it's oil painting or watercolor or charcoal or whatever. It's not too late to start it, and you never know, where it's going to take you. And it's fun doing it anyhow. So I mean, you got nothing to lose. But that's one I would encourage older people to, if they feel like they have a desire to do it, I don't think you can worry about what your ability is until you start to, try to see what it is with your desires. And then for young kids, I would say just to be patient. And when you're doing a drawing, the biggest thing is to draw what you see and not what you think you see, because it's 2 totally different things. You have to trust your eyes, and if you want to get really high detailed, you have to be willing to put the time in. Don't try to sell yourself short. Do a little bit every day. I tell my kids this all the time, but everything's based on the law of accumulation. You do a little bit every time, a little, and at the end, you'll have something good, but you can't rush it. This is, it's not something that I feel like, I drive my wife crazy because I'll say, oh, I don't like my drawing, I hate it, it looks terrible, this isn't gonna work. 2 weeks later, after working on it like a couple hours a day, I'll look at it and I'll be like, and I'll tell her, it's coming out pretty good. And then it will go back and forth. But it's just, you have to be patient through the process. The process is the biggest thing to get to the end result. I have a website, and you can get there through GeorgeFerreiraArtwork.com.